Salams and welcome. Thank you for joining me in another episode of the English reading of the Holy Quran, translation and commentary by Abdullah Yusuf Ali, published by the IPCI Islamic Propagation Center International. As we mentioned, this is just mainly as an invitation to the non-Muslim readers of the Quran, those who are curious about the Quran, and this is just helping them go through the Quran so that you can listen to it while you are cycling or in the gym or while you are driving the car, so that at least the non-Muslims can get an understanding of the Quran and what it says, and at the same time it can be a revision and a refresher for those who are Muslims. Right, so today we are busy with chapter number 18, and remember there are 114 chapters in the Holy Quran, and we are busy with chapter number 18, which is a fabulous chapter with deep meanings, which is known as Surah Kahf, the cave. What an amazing chapter, right? So let's get through it. There's so many lessons to learn in this magnificent chapter. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Introduction to Surah number 10, 15, 16, 17, 18, right? Chapter 18 of the Quran, Surah Kahf. Kahf means the cave. The cave. A wonderful, amazing story of the cave, right? It has been explained in the introduction to Surah 10, 15, 16, 17. It has been explained in the introduction to Surah 17 how the 5 surahs from Surah 17 to 21 develop the theme of the individual soul's spiritual history and how they fit into the general scheme of exposition. This particular Meccan surah may be called a lesson on the brevity and mystery of life. First, now there's various stories in here. First, there is a story of the companions of the caves, right? So let's make a note here. The companions of the cave. The companions of the cave, right? The youth who slept therein for a long period and yet thought they had been there only a day or less than a day. Then there is a story of the mysterious teacher who shows Moses how life itself is a parable. And the ulama tells us that that is the story of Khidr alayhi salam, right? So Khidr alayhi salam and Musa alayhi salam, right? Then there's a third story. And further, there is a story of Zulkarnain, the two-horned one, the powerful ruler of east and west, who made an iron wall to protect the weak against the strong, the Juj and Majuj, the Gog and Magog. So we have Zulkarnain, and there's a lot of very fascinating. So ulama, various people say whether it's Alexander the Great, but it's not him because he wasn't a believer. But there's a lot of other theories as to who it could be as well. Please listen to Dr. Umar from ISRA Foundation from Australia. He gives some fascinating insights into this, that it also has to do with cosmology as well. So fascinating insights, right? So let's continue. The parables refer to the brevity, to the uncertainty of life. I thought there were 4 stories, or I may have missed one, right? And who made an iron wall to protect the weak against the strong. The parables refer to the brevity, uncertainty and vanity of this life, to the many paradoxes in it which can only be understood by patience and the fullness of knowledge, and to the need of guarding our spiritual gains against the incursions of evil, right? Let's look at a summary of this magnificent chapter. Let's a summary of verses 1 to 22. The Quran is a direction and a warning. This life is brief, very brief, and subject to vicissitudes. Our ideas of time are defective, as shown in the story of the companions of the cave, who had faith, truth, patience, and other virtues, but their life was a mystery that can be fathomed but by a few. And these are famously known as the 7 youth of the cave, like you'll find in other scriptures, but there's no definite number can be said of how many youth were in the cave, right? Then in verses 23 to 44, we have the summary that knowledge is for God. Be on your guard against idle conjectures and hopes. Learn from the Quran the parable of man who is puffed up with his world's goods and is brought to nothing. This, and then in verses 45 to 59, this life is uncertain and variable. Goodness and virtue are better and more durable. for the day of reckoning will come with its mercy and its wrath. Then in verses 60 to 82, Moses alayhi salam, in his thirst for knowledge, forgot his limitations. Patience and faith were enjoined on him, and he understood when the paradoxes of life was explained to him. Then we have lastly in verses 83 till the end of the chapter, Zulkarnain had a wide dominion. He punished the guilty and rewarded the good. He protected the weak from the lawless, but he had faith. He was a Muslim. He had Iman and valued the guidance of God. That God is one, that means that there he promoted the concept of Tawheed, right? And his service is righteousness. The service of Allah is righteousness. Right, let's look at a summary of the rhythmic prose from verses 1 to 22. The book of Revelation gives straight directions to make our lives straight, to warn us against evil and guide us to the good everlasting. Teach the truth, but fret not about men rejecting the truth. The parable of the companions of the cave shows how God works wonders beyond our fathoming or understanding, how faith is a sure refuge in ways we know not, how time itself works God's plan before we know how it passes. How can He give us rest and raise us back to life against all odds, and how futile it is to engage in controversies about matters we know not, right? So you avoid these things, right? Avoid hair-splitting arguments and avoid hair-splitting debates, because that will just make you weak. It makes you physically weak, morally weak, spiritually weak, intellectually weak, right? It drains your resources. Right, so join me. This is chapter 10, 15, 16, 17, 18. So we are busy with Surah 18, part number 2. Right, join me in the next episode where we'll start with Surah 18, which is known as Surah Kahf, or the cave. We will start off with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, where this chapter starts off beautifully with Alhamdulillah, praise be to God, right? Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ameen Ya Rabbil Alameen.